Kelly, go ahead. Yeah. Take a couple. There's just cheerleader. Why is that?
Yeah.
So Mark's trying to tell me. She was there.
Sure that
You need a pen, Joe?
sure.
Good evening. On behalf of the AC Valley School Board, staff, and community, I welcome you to our wonderful school district. My name is David McDevitt, honored to be the superintendent at AC Valley for the past 12 years and served as high school principal 5 years prior. AC Valley draws students from 125 square miles. We encompass portions of Armstrong, Butler, Clarion, and Venango counties. We're organized in 2 buildings. We have a K through 6 elementary and a 7 through 12 high school located here on the same campus. AC Valley Junior Senior High School was opened in 1965 and was built to accommodate 880 students. Today, we have roughly 340 kids here at the high school. Through attrition, we've been able to maintain a sound education program, but we struggle to fill high school sports just like other Clarion County school districts in the room today. And that's the reason why we're here tonight. We're going to begin with introductions from the three school districts, administrative team, and school board members. We'll provide an overview of the cooperative sports discussion that we've been having. We'll review the proposed student handbook and answer community questions that were pre-submitted. And then at the end of the meeting, we'll have time to answer any kind of other questions that you may have. Keep in mind that these three school boards will be voting on November 20th, 2023 on a variety of different cooperative agreement motions that will be on the agenda. So nothing's formal tonight. We're opened up for discussion. And then finally, I remind all in attendance that we have students in the auditorium and ask that our discourse be conducted in a manner that's conducive to community standards. At the end of this meeting, we'll have plenty of time at the mic over here to hear any kind of questions that you may have. We're going to try to limit that to 2 minutes per question, and we will be concluding at 8 o'clock tonight. So this time, we'll go ahead and introduce everybody.
My name's Megan Dreyer. I'm on the AC Valley School Board and I represent Scrubgrass Township.
My name is Carrie Armagust. I'm on the Allegheny Clarion Valley School District School Board. I represent Allegheny Township. I'm also a member of our athletic committee.
My name is Bill Jordan. I'm the high school principal here at AC Valley.
I'm John Kimmel. I'm the superintendent at Union School District.
I'm Mike Hall. I'm the superintendent at Keystone School District.
John Kreese, Union School Board.
Jason Say, Keystone School Board and Athletic Council.
John Slagle, School Board President for Keystone.
Andy Carlson, Union High School Principal.
Dave Sherman, AC Valley Athletic Director.
Bill Irwin, Keystone Athletic Director.
Scott Kendall, Union Athletic Director.
Ange Selbo, Assistant Athletic Director, Union.
Kelly McNaughton, I'm the Keystone High School Principal.
Jason Best, I'm the Assistant High School Principal and Assistant AD.
I'll begin tonight's discussion. One of the concerns that has been brought to my attention regarding these co-ops and the discussion about agreements with the three districts is the timeline of how quickly the discussion has moved forward and what's perceived by a lot of folks as a rush to jam these things through. And specifically, the question is why rushing on these agreements when most of them are for the 24-25 school year. So I want to just go through that. I'd like to present some information from the PIAA perspective that is the impetus for trying to get the majority of these agreements in place. I'd also like to touch briefly on the permissible reasons for creating athletic agreements between districts based on the PIAA Constitution and bylaws. At any time, if anybody has any questions after our meeting tonight and needs a copy of what I discuss here, it's on page 15 of the PIAA Constitution. It can be found online as well. The main reason for what I'll put in parentheses, the rush to get these agreements in place is to be able to permit our student athletes to be able to participate in postseason play. These opportunities would not be available if we were just to do these agreements at any other time. And I'm going to explain that. PIAA on every odd-numbered year, which is this year, request enrollment information from the schools in order to realign the classification system for athletics across the state. This is the case this year. In fact, at the middle of October, an email was sent to all of the athletic directors and principals across the state asking for enrollment numbers so that new classifications could be made. These new classifications take effect starting 24, 25, and go through 25 and 26. In 2025, they will send out that email again, and districts will submit those numbers one more time. If at any time a school district submits a cooperative agreement for approval that changes classification, and it is not during this odd-numbered year between the time of October 1st and November 31st, and it changes classification for the schools that participate, then postseason play, or playoffs as it's well known, is off the table. This has been a rule for PIAA for some time. The exception to that rule is this year. Between the time of October 1st and November 30th, if we apply for a cooperative agreement now and it changes classification, it doesn't matter. We will be able to play in postseason play in the playoffs. And that's one of the reasons why there seems to be a rush. The people on this panel would like our student athletes to have that opportunity to play in the playoffs. If we were to submit these cooperative agreements December 1st or thereafter, we would not be able to go into playoffs. The people on this panel all are thinking of the same thing. We all have in the same mindset that we want opportunities for our kids, and that would include the playoff system, and that's why we need to do this, or it seems like a rush to do it during this time frame. Now, with some of the athletics agreements that we're talking about, will not change classification. If it doesn't change classification, and if you don't know what that means, it's single A school, double A, triple A, that type of thing. If it doesn't change that, then we can do it at another time. And the panel is considering those things. So just to reemphasize, submitting any application for an agreement after November 30th eliminates the possibility for playoffs in the next cycle. Now, in regard to what is permissible reasons that the PIAA notes in their handbook and what they consider relevant, I will read a couple of lines directly from the PIAA Constitution on page 15. Section 9A states that the PIAA Board of Directors support co-ops for greater student participation or for schools that have demonstrated a lack of participation numbers in respective programs. The folks on this panel have gone down through the numbers, and I want to make sure that we're clear on this, not every sport is on the table for a cooperative athletic agreement arrangement. It is the ones that we went down through, and we see that our numbers are low, our participation is low, and we look 3 years into the future at the numbers coming up from the elementary, look at the numbers coming from junior high, and we consider that in making these determinations. Our area is shrinking in the number of people in our area. Our school numbers have dropped dramatically over the last 15 or 20 years, in some cases by half. So it's very, very difficult to offer athletics for sports such as football, soccer, things like that, that need a large number of students out on the field at one time. We'll talk about some more of those reasons, and some of the other folks will add their input onto that. I want to touch back, though, as far as the handbook. It further states that it will not approve agreements that seek to better the quality of the team or to improve competitive advantages. I can tell you that the members of this panel seek only to increase opportunities and offer new possibilities for our students in sports that are currently not offered. For AC Valley and Union, that would be soccer and possibly wrestling as a new sport at various levels. The cooperative arrangements that we are talking about tonight are to save programs and to offer opportunities. And we're going to go line by line and discuss some of those things and go through the handbook that some of the folks up here have put a ton of time into, and hopefully answer some of those questions and eliminate misconceptions that are out there. I can tell you as one last point, although it seems like things have been rushed the last couple of months on this, the discussions in some of the sports, for instance, soccer, has been 3 years ongoing. AC Valley had a cooperative arrangement with Karn City in soccer, and participation was not real great because of the distance and the time scheduling for practices, things like that. But I certainly want to offer that opportunity for any student in the high school to be able to play soccer if that's what they wish to do. And by joining in with Keystone and their soccer program, it not only saves their program, but it does offer opportunities for our students. So I thank you for your time. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kimmel, and he's going to talk about the process and the Joint Operating Committee handbook that they've created.
Thank you, Dr. Jordan. First of all, I want to say thank you to everybody that came out tonight. It's not often that we put together a panel of people and get a crowd like this, so it's encouraging to see that many people that have a vested interest in our programs, in our schools, our communities, and our kids. So thank you for coming out this evening. To go through the process, a lot of what we hear, especially when we look on Facebook, social media, is, you know, why is this school entertaining going into co-ops with another school? Why did this school end up approaching the first school or the second school, so on and so forth. And the way that co-ops usually work and are formed is just casual conversations among people. So people see a need somewhere, they see an area where there might be a deficit or possibly need in where you're not going to be able to field a program. They happen to mention it to somebody else in another district. They start the conversation back and forth, which is what happened in this case. And those folks that were discussing it came back to the administrations. We talked to our boards. We asked if this was something that we should pursue moving forward. They gave the okay to have discussions, explore it further, and that's gotten us to where we are today. So with no further ado, what we're going to go through is the Cooperative Athletic Procedural Handbook. And this is a lengthy document, approximately 16 pages in length. We spent, I want to say, approximately 120 to 130 hours of time going through, talking back and forth, looking at the procedural angle of how we would make a three-school cooperative program work. And with that, I'm going to have Mr. Carlson actually run through, and since I can't see it, I'm going to stand up so I can see it from the side. So essentially, the first page was just going down through the table of contents. And whenever we first started putting this together, there were a number of topics that we went over. And they were mainly the things that we've noticed as we've had other cooperative agreements, items that were up for discussion, things that were always maybe of contention, or things that were just questionable type things that we always had to answer. The first part is, I'm sure most of you are probably asking this question, what sports are up for consideration? So these are the teams that we've discussed back and forth that we will be considering for cooperative agreement among all three schools. And you'll notice that we broke these out by male and female programs, and then also by the level of the program as well. So of course, varsity and JV are always together, and then we have junior high. Some of the programs are co-ed, such as soccer, and then generally with junior high, like track, we usually run those together as well. We can go on to the next one. And as you notice, as you look down through that, we're looking at the school that would host for each of those programs. Okay. And then another big question that we generally run into is how are we going to staff the programs? how many coaches are we going to have for each of the programs? What are the expected roster sizes? Where the coaches are going to come from, so on and so forth. So essentially, you're going to see in one of the later slides that we talk about a JOC. A JOC is a joint operating committee. A joint operating committee would be members of each of the 3 school boards, so we would have equal representation. Those folks would discuss athletic topics and come up with recommendations for the full boards of the other districts. So essentially, the host school is the one that does the voting whenever it comes down to official decisions, but the JOC makes that recommendation, and it is the expectation of the host school board that they're going to follow through with that recommendation unless there is a major concern of which the JOC was not aware prior to making that decision. So as you can look down through, and I hope you can see it from back in the audience. Is it not big enough? Okay. Can we make that any bigger? Is there a way that we can turn down the lights? We have a whole section in the middle up front if you want to move up.
Back screen too, please. Yes. Yeah, please. I was going to take a picture so I can see it. I can't see.
That way you can get a better picture of it.
Oh, yeah.
Jason, will this be available online?
We can share it online, yeah. Okay. So essentially, as our 3-school team, we went through who we thought the host school should be. So in some of these programs already, Union is the host school for the AC Valley Union Cooperative with varsity football and junior high football. Same thing with varsity sideline cheer, junior high sideline cheer, competitive cheer. Boys soccer, girls soccer, we don't have those programs currently at this point right now. Cross country, AC Valley has the facilities and also runs the program here, and I think that they have most of the students. So we try to look at some of those things. And essentially, we were looking at which schools had the facilities, already had the means to operate the program, and possibly were already running that program. Not necessarily. We're going to get into that later when we talk about transportation. So this will kind of evolve as we go through the process. Are there any other questions about like this that we didn't go through? Okay. Let's go on to the next one. So again, we put together a committee of individuals that looked at each of the sports. We came up with a logical number of coaches that we would need to run a sport with a typical size roster of students. And then for additional athletes that would be on that particular team, that would justify having some additional coaches. So that was basically what we put into this table. We were looking at, for example, again, varsity JV football. How many coaches do we typically have on a minimally sized team? And then if we have students over a particular size, then can we add coaches? And how do we do that? And then also, how do we come up with a formula for the appropriate number of volunteers to run those programs as well? Oftentimes we hear that we have either too many volunteers or not enough volunteers for particular programs. We wanted to be consistent on how we looked at each of the programs. We wanted to make sure that we were being fair across girls sports, boys sports, junior high, varsity, JV, so on and so forth. Something else that always comes up is that we have coaches from 3 different school districts that would then be working on the same teams. How do we come up with pay for those individuals? And these numbers are numbers that we've kind of come up with collaboratively. We try to come up with a fair pay, but something that was not going to be overly taxing on each of the districts. And we put in a pay scale which is very similar to what teachers have. So when you start out in a particular year, you're within one of the columns on that pay scale, and then your experience with that particular program puts you further down on the pay scale in one of the rows below. So that would be how we would determine how to set the pay for each of those coaches. Each team would have one head coach, and then they would have the assistant coaches to fill the remaining number of coaches for the program. We also split those into tier 1 programs and tier 2 programs. The tier 1 programs would be football and volleyball in the fall. In the winter, it would be basketball. In the spring, it would be track. And then we have tier 2 programs, which typically, I don't want to say they don't take the same amount of time commitment, but are often not at that high of a level of pay. And we came up with a secondary scale for that as well. And we looked at all 3 pays across each of the 3 school districts. We did our best to make sure that nobody was looking at a pay cut anywhere along the line, but nobody was also getting an exorbitant pay raise by going through this process. So as we're looking at staffing these programs, since we are looking at taking 3 districts and putting them together, we would go through the hiring process all over again in filling those spots when it's not contractually necessary to keep somebody within one of those positions. Right, and we don't have volleyball up there because it was one of the programs that was not considered for cooperative agreement as well. That's why you don't see it up there. Okay. So we tried to come up with a list of hiring procedures. It's something that we had to figure out, I think, through trial and error as a 2-school co-op, and adding a 3rd school is very similar within that process. So in forming the JOC, essentially, they help to make those recommendations to the host school. So the host school district will get permission to advertise from their school board first. We do that with all of our districts right now. If we're going to hire for any positions, we ask our board for permission to advertise for that position. Then the host school district will post internally and ask the participating schools, the other 2 school districts, to do so as well. And then the host school district would advertise in all 3 communities for coaches, because we're trying to pull from a larger community of individuals, trying to get a larger talent pool for those coaches, and also trying to get some representation or equal representation from each of the different districts as well. So the JOC will receive all the applications for those positions, and then they will conduct interviews with prospective candidates. During the first year of the cooperative program, all positions would be open, again, unless it's contractually necessary to keep somebody within the program. If the JOC determines that current head coach will return for the next season, then there's no need for interviews or to advertise. So that person would just remain within that position. The head coach will submit a list of names to the JOC for their assistant coaches. That's what we generally do now. We take the recommendations from the head coach, and unless there's some kind of a major issue somewhere, that's who the board generally will appoint. The head coach will submit a list of names also for approved volunteers, and we try to keep within that number of volunteers that was on that list. However, there are always exceptions. If the head coach can articulate a exceptional need for another volunteer coach, or say, for example, there's somebody available that's willing to volunteer their expertise and they're exceptionally qualified for that, then we would consider them as well. Okay. The board approval process, essentially, again, the JOC recommends the individual host school district for approval, and all pay for coaches will come from the host school district, and the burden, though, or the cost, will be equally shared among all 3 districts. So what we do right now is we have a spreadsheet. We put all those costs for running the program onto that spreadsheet, and at the end of the season, the business managers share that information, and then the 2 participating schools basically pay their third of what that cost is. So as I'm sure many of the questions that we've had were, along the lines of how are we going to do this? We're all saying that we're struggling for funding, and now we're adding programs, and we're doing something that's going to cost more money. We're looking at a way of either keeping things cost neutral or saving money because we're spreading that cost among 3 districts. So evaluations of coaches and disciplinary procedures. The JOC will hold end of season coaches evaluation meetings. Essentially, it's like an exit interview at the end of the season. The AD and administration from the hiring school district, I can't see the rest of what's up there because it's too small. Basically, they're going to be responsible for investigating any staffing complaints or issues, and they would be the ones that would impose any kind of necessary disciplinary action. So it always has to come from the employer. That would be the host school. But they're trying to evaluate those things as a JOC and come up with that recommendation as a joint committee from all 3 school districts as well. Head coaches will be responsible for completing the end of season checklist, and these are things, again, that are just common positive practice for coaches, making sure all your inventory is in, making sure that your reporting is out for all the awards and things like that for students, reporting lost or damaged or stolen property, budgets for the following season, returning keys, doing the exit interview, so on and so forth. Volunteers, again, we kind of went through that already as far as the number of volunteers. So practices. As Mr. Say had mentioned, whenever we talk about the host school, that doesn't necessarily mean where all the practices were. So some of the things that we talked about in coming up with this particular method was we talked about maybe having one school host all of the sports or the sports that you would need busing for in the fall, and then having another school district host all the winter sports, and then another one host all the spring sports, which from a financial standpoint makes a lot of sense because you're only then sending buses in one direction, and transportation ends up being a lot of your overall cost. With looking at what the burden would be, though, on our athletes and how long they would be, I feel like I'm in a play in Broadway. In looking at the burden on our students and our athletes, our coaches, in having to be away from home, being on buses throughout the week, and some of their other time commitments, we looked at possibly doing more of a rotation. So with that rotation, we would do something like week 1 at AC Valley, week 2 at Keystone, week 3 at Unit. And this is typically for those sports where you need a bus to transport the students. Some of those other programs just don't make sense. Like, we're not going to run golf over at Union because we don't have a golf course, or cross country. We can't run that there because we don't have a cross country course. Now, we could do some of the practices as far as like speed work and things like that on the track, but it wouldn't necessarily make sense for every program to go in this direction. Cooperative practices should have priority over in the schedule over the other sports as well, because we know it's going to be more difficult to accommodate those co-op teams. So those teams would have the priority for the gym space, the football fields, things like that as well. And practices only requiring van transportation may be scheduled at alternate locations as well. So they can move back and forth, but there's a little bit more flexibility with those programs. Winter sports, schools will rotate practices on a weekly basis so that travel time is limited for all students. And due to the smaller number of teams, or number of people on those teams and number of teams, we think that we can cover most of those with van usage, not have to use buses for a large portion of the practices in the winter. And in the spring, that's where it is, I think, a little bit more challenging for busing because the programs are much bigger, a lot more athletes are participating, and there is a large number of teams as well. So going through that rotation again, just like in the fall, would work. And then we've also had questions about contests, like who would host each of the games or the contests, where would those be, who would be the host school for those. We would share those as well. So like in football season, typically you have 10 regular season games. That means that you have 5 that are home, you have 5 that are away. We would look at doing a rotation again. So we would have 2 home games for one school, 2 home games for another school, 1 for the third. And the following year, we'll shift that around. And then the next year, we'll shift it around again. And if any point in time a school cannot host one of those events, then we'll just utilize one of the other facilities for that as well. Okay. And staffing responsibilities would be on the host school. So ADs are the ones that really get involved with this. They're the ones that are setting up the referees. They're the ones that are getting the field set up, getting the game day staff, ticket takers, security, training services, so on and so forth. Sometimes we get questions about who is going to get the gate receipts. So the gate receipts would come back into the host school, or the school that is hosting the event. And again, everything comes back through the business managers onto a spreadsheet. So all revenues are coming in from each of the three schools. All expenditures are coming in from each of the three schools. They go onto that spreadsheet and we split them by a third. So we're splitting all the cost. And if you can notice, the handbook was not necessarily meant for parents, community members. This is something that we use to operate, and it kind of guides our process. So all three districts are on the same page as well. Equipment and supplies, again, the host school is basically going to be responsible for all the equipment and supplies. However, we know that currently, as we're forming co-ops, each of the districts already have some of the equipment. So they're going to be able to share that equipment up front. But over the long term, the host school would be the one that purchases all the equipment and stores all the equipment and has it available. However, we would share that cost at the end of the season. Now, where this becomes a little bit tricky is if you need to, if you're going to transfer your practices from one location to the next. Some of that equipment you may either have to travel with or schedule your practices at one facility versus another if there's specialized equipment at one place that is not at the other place as well. And again, we've talked about financial procedures quite a bit. The host school bears all the costs associated with the program throughout the season. And again, they keep that spreadsheet and then they share it out at the end of the season. Now, one of the things that we ran into that was kind of different last season was having, actually it might be this fall season, was running into a situation where maybe a school only has one participant. And we're asking that question, is it fair for that school to pay a third of the cost of the program when they only have one participant out of maybe 12 athletes? And we didn't think that that was fair. So we came up with a formula to make it a little bit more fair. So if a school does not have any athletes in a program, they would share zero of that cost. But if that school has one person within the program, then they would share 10% of the cost. If they have two athletes, they would share 20% of the cost. And we figured that whenever you get to three individuals, you're up at 30%, you might as well just pay the 33, and that would be fair across the program. So we did take that into account, that it wouldn't be fair for a school district to pay for a third of a program that they're barely utilizing. And these are just some of the funding codes, and our business managers are much more involved with these things than what the rest of us are. So we talked a little bit about the Joint Operating Committee. The Joint Operating Committee, again, is that group of representatives from the school boards at each of the three districts. And what we decided on was that 3 school board members would be selected from each district to represent their districts on that JOC. And they would have regular meetings to discuss the workings of those cooperative groups. And with that, the president would be one member that would rotate every year from one district to the next. So say, for example, in putting that JOC together, Keystone's representative is the president this year. They would not be next year. It would either be AC Valley or Union for the following year. So that way that we're always having the president be represented by somebody from each of the districts over time. Again, decisions of the JOC would be determined by majority decision, and there would be 3 individuals from each of those school boards that would be the representatives, so that we would have an odd number of individuals. If at any time any board member would not be able to attend a meeting, that anybody else within the board can be an alternate, so as to make sure that we always have 3 representatives from each of the districts. And then if for some reason one school could not come up with 3 individuals to attend the meeting, then either their superintendent or principal would be able to attend that meeting. And if not them, then possibly their athletic director. But the whole goal is to make sure that we have equal representation and 3 individuals at each of those meetings where we're going to make a recommendation to the host school district board. And then the Joint Operating Committee has the responsibility of approving that athletic handbook, which is what we're going through right now. Something we usually forget about is official pay rate, and this was something our athletic directors came up with, was what do we pay our what do we pay our referees whenever they're coming in to officiate events? And whenever I was the KSAC president, I think we ran into this. We always kind of argued back and forth over trying to get officials. There were only so many people that could officiate games, and so many contests out there, and usually there are more contests than there are people available to officiate. So we would often see that school districts would argue and try to put out a higher pay rate than their neighbors so that they could pull the people in and get the officials for their contests. We wanted to come up with something that was agreeable by all three of our districts, and they put together some numbers here, and I believe we do not have soccer in there because I think Mr. Kittle was putting a lot of these in. We don't have soccer at this point, so we didn't have those rates, but those are things that we would continue to put in as we move forward and agree upon those rates. And then the final slide is probably the one that most people are passionately involved with, is talking about the name, talking about a mascot, talking about colors, talking about uniforms. And we haven't come up with a name. We haven't come up with a mascot or uniforms or colors or anything of that nature yet. Something that we have discussed is that we don't want to make a major financial burden on our community. So with many of these programs, they can operate with the uniforms that we currently have as we go through our normal replacement cycles. And our school districts are already budgeting and paying for those uniforms that we're replacing over time. So it's not an additional burden. Likewise, with having three communities together, booster clubs and programs can help contribute to some of those expenses as well. But what we would like to do is come up with a process that is fair in coming up with a name, mascots, uniforms, and colors, things of that nature. And the thought of number of people on our panel was that we would come up with some options, some acceptable options, and then push those out to students and the community members for voting as far as something that you would like to see. So I think we've already started receiving some recommendations or considerations for those at this point, and I'm sure that we would accept any of those that you would like to offer, and then we can take those and kind of narrow those down and then put them out through some kind of a voting process to make sure that the community is getting something that they can accept and that they appreciate. So with that, we will now move into the questions that we had received earlier. So we had advertised that we were accepting questions, and we received a number of those, and we went through as a group coming up with our answers to those questions, and we'll have a panel of individuals at this point answering those.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to echo Dr. Kimmel's statements. It's so great to see so many people out with the interest in everything that we're doing for our community, for our students, and I'm just glad to see all of you here this evening. As was stated, we did receive some questions, and we wanted to put these some answers to these questions before we went to any other questions that you had from the community groups. I'll start with the first question. Is there a need to add an additional team to keep programs for AC Valley and Union students? As a group collectively, we do feel there is a necessary step to continue to offer programs to AC Valley and Union students, as well as Keystone. As many of us know, the population of our schools continue to decline, and in order to provide the students with opportunities, it is necessary. Also, I think everyone involved realizes this is probably the first step in also allowing us to offer more academic and other opportunities for our students.
The second question is, how would the merger impact transportation and missed academic time for students participating in sports? Honestly, the merger would not have any different effect on the students than it currently does for those that are participating in the co-op. We would still practice at the same times. We would be taking direct routes to each facility, and the distance between the schools is very similar for all three districts.
Will this lead to the elimination of positions? For example, athletic director. No, this would not lead to the elimination of the AD position. Each district will continue to host a few sports individually, and there will also be the need for someone in place to take care of the day-to-day workings of the co-op programs. As far as coaches, the JOC will be presented with a plan that will determine the number of coaches per sport and a number of participants to meet to add coaches if necessary. We have to put a lot of time and effort into creating this opportunity for kids, and we want to make sure that it is the best possible situation that we can give them.
In the event this pushes kids away, what plan do you have to keep them? This is a concern that everyone shares and not something we took lightly when considering this proposal. However, it all comes back to the fact that with declining population and participation numbers, we could all three be in a position sooner rather than later where we cannot offer opportunities to kids. Allowing athletes to compete against athletes of similar maturity level and skill level should encourage students to participate. However, some students who are not willing to raise their level of commitment to be competitive may decide not to play certain sports. With more sports being offered, they do have other options.
The next question is, would this open up the opportunity for more sports like soccer or wrestling? Obviously for Union and AC Valley, it would offer the opportunity for girls and boys soccer as well as co-ed soccer. Wrestling is something that we have discussed, but I don't think anybody currently offers that, but it is on the table eventually.
Would the school colors or mascot change? As Dr. Kimmel previously mentioned, the last page of the handbook is left blank. Those questions are unanswered, and we look forward to working with the community to create mascot and colors for this co-op.
Would there be a coach from each district? Our hope would be yes, there would be a coach from each district. This would give us someone to recruit and work with students from each school. This would also give the administrators from each district a point of contact for each athletic, extracurricular, and academic opportunity.
The next question is, does this merger include all sports and activities? All sports were on the table for review for sustainability when we started. After we reviewed them, we determined only the sports on this list were needed for sustainability to be included in this cooperative. If football goes through, we would look at certainly adding marching band, but if football doesn't go through, it doesn't make sense to do that. Additionally, we could potentially look at partnering with both districts and doing other things like class trips, extracurricular activities, and eventually maybe academic opportunities.
What about all the time students will spend with transportation to and from schools? What about homework and family time? The amount of time spent for transportation would not be significantly different than what athletes or band members are experiencing right now. There's no plan to go from one school to another school and then to a third school unless it is absolutely necessary. The handbook covers transportation quite in depth.
How will the extra attendees and band students be seated at the games? The band has already had to sit on tracks and stand due to lack of seating. Union had a significant discussion about that if cooperative agreements do in fact go through, they'll need to add bleachers to the other side of the field to accommodate all the spectators and band members at home games. Keystone has a large amount of seating, and AC Valley has a large number of portable bleachers. As far as away games, we really have no control over what seating that the other schools have.
I would like to add too, we'd probably be playing some larger schools that might have more seating when we go to play though, if we do this cooperative. Will this change who we play and how far we travel with the current mergers of Central Clarion? Are there less teams available? There is a great possibility this would change who we play. However, it's not going to mean more travel. It's likely to mean less travel. Most of the schools that would be bigger would be closer. We wouldn't be playing as many single A schools such as Port Allegheny, Coudersport, Otto Eldred. We'd be likely playing schools more like Farm City, Montauk, Brookville. So it would save some of the Friday night travel and some of the travel for our other sports.
Another question, why was there not ample time to the newly merged sports and programs? There are programs that were just merged, and we are looking at a third school to merge with. On the programs we are proposing, girls basketball is the one that was recently merged with AC Valley and Union. This is being looked at with Keystone because of the necessity of low numbers of participation in this sport.
Additionally to cost, what would be the expense in regards to uniforms? What finances have been spent already on combined school name uniforms, and what the projected cost be for our new uniforms for each combined sport? We have come up with the cycle to replace uniforms for the co-op programs. Again, we would provide 3 to 4 names to the students at each school and ask them to vote on the mascot and colors. We would love to have public suggestions on the name and colors, and the joint operating committee will narrow it down to 3 and 4 and take those to each respective board, then to the students. Again, this cost too also goes for what sports will actually be approved through this process.
This question's a little long, so bear with me. In the past, if a school was unable to form a team or did not have the sport available, and a child wanted to play, they could go to a neighboring school that offered the sport, but the parent provided transportation, which is not an additional cost to the district. With placing the burden on the school that does not have enough to form a team, could that not potentially save money for the district? Due to abuses of situations like this in larger areas, and also people trying to work the transfer system, PIAA has become more stringent guidelines than they used to do on this policy. This is only allowed through a cooperative agreement between schools. For example, Union and Red Bank have a cooperative agreement right now in soccer and wrestling. There is little participation due to the additional burden put on parents and athletes. We want to make sure that if our students are going to be able to participate, the school supports them to go do that and pay for the transportation and get them the uniforms and everything they need.
Has anyone from the districts or board currently spoken to the children involved in merged sports? I've spoken with several children that currently attend the Allegheny Clarion Valley who were discouraged from signing up from athletics due to mergers and too many being signed up that they felt it would not be worth it for them to even participate. I also have spoken with children that continue to play in the merged sports that get overwhelmed with the constant travel to go back and forth between schools for practice and the time taken away from their schoolwork. If merging is ultimately causing a further hardship on the children involved and causing less participation for children that would like to participate, what benefit is that to our schools and community? Some of our coaches have met with players, and we have also spoken to any student who asks us questions. After clearing up misinformation and other bad information, the kids understand why this is necessary. As always, the kids, more times than not, understand and just want to participate. It's the adults that are against the opportunities and have issues with them. The students will also be taught very valuable life lessons that are brought about by athletic and extracurricular opportunities, and also learn the value of hard work.
Though I'm sure this would help to have a better understanding and record due to having the ability to choose the top athletes from each school, I'm hesitant at the effects this may have on the community and athletes that lose the opportunity to play when there are too many for a team. Also, would standing really improve by merging, or would that make the 3 schools have to play against larger districts? In merging, that takes away 2 comparable local schools for the children to compete against. Playing more locally helps to reduce travel costs for games and makes for a more even playing ground. This is not about creating a super team or having a better record. This is about providing sustainable programs to our students. This co-op between AC Valley and Union has shown that the 2 communities have almost become one, and that will certainly be the hope that the combination would produce as well by adding Keystone. We are currently already playing larger districts at AC Valley and Union, and we are already in a co-op with Union and AC, so adding Keystone would just take away 1 school for cooperative sports. Also, in instances where we play larger schools on our schedule, we will play more local schools than on the small school schedule and therefore reduce travel. If you look at current contest scores, you will see that the playing ground is not even right now.
In my opinion, along with several other parents and community members that I have spoken with, that if the school has enough to field a team, there should be no need to merge. That there should be a set number, and if that number is met, you play for your school, and the merger should be taken on a team by team basis, not these yearly contracts. If you merge when there is enough at each school, that is a whole team of athletes that would now not have the opportunity to play, potentially get discouraged and quit. Then what will the youth turn to? And I feel like if we look at this situation, we have Keystone needs this cooperative in some sports. We need this in other sports. AC Valley needs this in other sports. Independently, there are some of these programs that probably could run by school district. However, because they need us in some and we need them in some, we feel it is in best interest to join together and support each other so kids don't lose any opportunities. And additionally, we can play JV games because oftentimes this year, I believe at AC Valley and Union, for example, football, they've played 2 JV games. Keystone has played 0. So therefore, opportunity is lost by not potentially doing this merger.
Participation in their youth programs has been on the rise, and the younger we get children involvement, the more likely children are to stay with a sport. But seeing the discouragement from children going from a youth sport into a merged junior high sport where they feel there is favoritism due to what school the head coach comes from seems to be yet another deterrent. How is an issue such as this being addressed? There may be a large number of students in youth. By the way, they all 3 play together at that level. But history shows that a large number in youth sports does not always lead to large numbers at junior high and JV or varsity level. In fact, there are some who discourage students from participating in junior high sports and sometimes even at other levels. Our head varsity coaches choose their staff and oversee their junior high programs. If they feel that a coach is not being fair, that will be addressed. To question the integrity of people who are spending such a great deal of time for very little pay is not only unfair, but a matter of opinion. There are many parents coaching their own children in youth sports wrongfully accused of this as well. However, if given the opportunity, would be a part of one of our programs.
This is a longer question, so I'll try to get that and then have a space in between the answer. I feel strongly that children having involvement in athletics helps to grow the community and instill much needed core values in these young athletes. Seeing an increase in juvenile criminals and dependent youth, I feel programs such as the athletic programs offered help significantly with keeping our youth on the right path. Seeing an athletic program that helps a child that struggles is truly rewarding, and I would much rather have a better community that helps children to stay on a good path than to have a school with a winning sports team. The more opportunity we have for these children to participate, the more eyes there are on these children. Even in speaking with several teachers, they would discourage the merger to keep more student athletes, to have more children in their district have to reach their academic requirements just in order to play. Again, the more children involved should be the goal, which would also help to keep GPAs up throughout the districts. Has anyone spoken with the teachers in the districts to see their concerns with the merger? And here's the answer. This group could not agree with you more that involving children in sports and extracurricular activities helps to reinforce the core values that are hopefully being instilled at home by their families and/or guardians. That being said, we are trying to make our programs sustainable so that they do have these opportunities as young adults. You also said about providing more opportunity. That is exactly what we are trying to accomplish with this proposal, and eventually, hopefully, even offer more academic opportunities to the students as well. Fielding all levels of programs and allowing athletes to compete against like ability level athletes from other districts, will likely keep more athletes involved due to them realizing some level of success. Also, most of us are either teachers or have been teachers, so we completely understand their point of view.
Could a merger that AC Valley does not take part in have a negative impact on sports that they can offer? And I think this answer goes for all districts. I think independently, each of our districts cannot successfully field teams for our sports. We are going to lose opportunities, and it may be baseball for one district, it may be football for another district, it may be girls basketball for another district. Any district who does not participate in this co-op, I believe, runs the risk of not being able to field a team and losing opportunities for students to participate.
The next question is in regard to transportation and coming up with a single pay rate for extracurricular hauling. Each district pays their contract for busing to and from practices. The host district would pay their rate for contest transportation.
Who does this benefit? Students, coaches, administration, athletes, or egos? This can benefit for all who are involved. Our current co-ops have benefited students, coaches, parents, schools, athletes, bands, administration, and especially communities, and we look forward to building these same relationships with members of the Keystone community from Union and AC Valley. Everyone involved in this process has checked their egos at the door, realizing that what we are trying to do is to benefit kids by creating sustainable programs for both now and the future. Contrary to popular belief, there is a lot of work for everyone involved, from the superintendents to the principals to the athletic directors to the coaches to the kids to the school boards, but they all do it with one goal in mind, which is to provide the students and future students from all three districts with the most and best opportunities they can. Ultimately, students should have the opportunity to be successful, not set up for failure before they even start.
Who decides who plays and who gets cut? The coaches hired by the JOC would hire the coaches they feel are best decided and decide who plays. We're not planning to have cuts at this time. We're trying to sustain programs. The last thing we want to do is cut individuals from participating.
My question, why has this been kept so secret if it was such a great thing for kids? There's been nothing secretive about this process. No one has tried to hide anything from anyone. If anything, there's been a lot of misinformation that has been spread about this process that has been used by individuals to make this seem to be a negative thing. From the day of the original conversation from one AD to another, all three districts have been involved every step of the way, trying to do what will create sustainable programs for students. Once it was determined by representatives from all three schools that there was sufficient interest to move forward with forming a proposal, we advertised for this public meeting. However, we all needed sufficient time to put together a proposal to discuss. Otherwise, this meeting would be pointless. I would like to add football as an example. We started football in August, open field practices, things like that. By the time the first game came around, AC Valley Union hoped to be able to field a football team that would play both varsity and JV games. Keystone felt the same way. AC Valley Union had ninth grade students playing on Friday night, going up against seniors of other schools, quite large boys to be honest, getting hurt and unable to play in the JV game then on Mondays. We only played 2 JV games this year. Having a co-op where we would actually have a full JV team, 9th graders, 10th graders playing against other 9th grade, 10th graders, not only provides them with safety, but it also provides them with the opportunity to be able to play against students of their own skill level and to build that skill. Those are the things that we discussed as the season went on when we saw that we couldn't sustain a JV program. and Keystone was in the same boat. I'm not 100% sure, played one game or two JV games. Zero JV games. So hopefully, to answer the question, this is going to open up opportunities for these kids, not shut them down.
When did the athletic committee start making financial decisions for the school board? The athletic committee is not making financial decisions for the board as a whole. They are simply doing as they always have, gathering information, sharing the information, and recommending to the board as a whole, who ultimately makes the final decision for each district. Again, this process has been used for years. This is not something new or sneaky. It's the way we have always worked. As of this point, we are unaware of any of our boards officially voting on anything related to this discussion at this point.
The next two questions I have to take in tandem. The first question is it true that boys basketball and boys golf will not be a part of the merger? And if that is true, since girls golf and girls basketball are part of this cooperative agreement, is that not Title IX violation? Title IX explicitly seeks to give people opportunities. If we do not enter into this cooperative agreement, we would be potentially risking a Title IX violation because we're not providing those opportunities. Again, we said this a lot because it is the truth. The goal is to sustain programs and give girls and boys opportunities to go out for all sports when they have the opportunity.
If not all sports at this time, has there been discussion regarding when a cooperative agreement is appropriate and what it is not for a sport? I'll start off by just showing, you can't see it, but this is a working spreadsheet that we have that has every sport that's offered listed and the number of participants for AC Valley, Union, and Keystone, and totaling them up. And the numbers are small, very small in some of them. So yes, a significant amount of conversation has been held regarding the requirements to consider a cooperative agreement for a sport. And all sports in the beginning were reviewed. In general, if one of the participating schools will struggle to field a team consistently, which includes having some athletes against which to practice, a cooperative agreement may be considered. Also, when the safety of athletes is in question, such as in contact or collision sports, a cooperative agreement may be considered for that. We have looked into the cost associated with cooperative programs, as none of our 3 school districts want to take on additional financial burdens. If a cooperative agreement may produce greater opportunities for our students, it would also be considered, such as fielding another junior high level team or a junior varsity team. Since each program must be approved individually, there is significant control given to administrators, collective school boards, and the D9 committee in reviewing programs and determining whether they are beneficial for our students. At any level, a reasonable standard is not able to be reached. The process can be stopped.
If 2 of the 3 school boards vote in favor of the 3-team cooperative agreement in some or all sports during their November meeting, but that one does not, what is the end result of that scenario? All 3 school districts are expected to vote on the agreed upon cooperative athletic agreements one at a time by a sports team. The motions are worded so that all 3 school districts have to approve the individual agreement to develop a cooperative team for that particular sport or team. If any one school district fails to vote to approve the agreement, nothing changes from our current status.
The next one is just a question, and it's a pretty good, or a statement. A cooperative agreement for a sport should only be discussed, considered when the sport is no longer able to field a full team. And at the beginning of this process, we did look at every program because we were trying to assess the sustainability of all programs. And you'll see sports such as volleyball and boys basketball, to name 2 examples, are not on the list. Golf as well for boys, because both of these programs are currently sustainable. The only sports on this list, we either see an immediate need or a need probably in a year or 2. And we want to make sure students have the opportunity to participate in playoffs.
When the handbook and integrated pay scale are presented for approval to each board, if one board doesn't approve of it, was this question just answered? I apologize. My packet is not correct. So number 3. Okay. If one of the school votes no and there are not enough athletes at that school to have a team in a particular sport, will the district enter a co-op with another school district, or will those athletes no longer be able to participate in that sport? If one of the school votes no, then there are not enough athletes at that school to have a team in a particular sport, they will be in the same position they are currently. If the district is currently in a cooperative agreement, AC Valley and Union, nothing will change. If this team is Keystone, or if the AC Valley Union cooperative team, without enough athletes to field a team, they may decide to search for a cooperative team elsewhere, boost participation so as to be able to field a team or not have a team for the season in question.
Since all of the sports that are currently being considered for the three-way co-op with Keystone are already part of a co-op between Union and AC Valley, why is there any reason to vote no? Please consider the fact that cheer, track, and cross-country can have an unlimited amount of participants for all competitions. As for baseball and football, while these sports can only have a certain number of players on the field at one time, adding additional players would allow for a full JV schedule and full varsity schedule, and possibly a full ninth grade schedule. This would result in more players getting more playing time than they have in the past due to low numbers causing the inability to play these full schedules. Your question highlights many of the positive points made by those working to develop the logistics procedures for a three-school cooperative program in each sport. Opposition to these programs generally cites athletic opportunities for individual athletes, an anticipated decrease in participation overall, travel time for practices, playing against larger schools, and loss of identity, which is changing colors and mascots. Likewise, questions are raised about cost and who coaches the teams. These items have been addressed in our cooperative athletic procedural handbook.
When the handbook and integrated pay scale are presented for approval to each board, if one board doesn't approve part of it, what will be the procedure to resolve it? Same with the JOC budget each year. If the integrated pay scale and handbook are not acceptable to one, two, or all of the districts, it will be the charge of the administrative team from all 3 districts working together with the JOC to revise the document to the approval of the JOC for recommendation back to the hosting school. Similarly, the JOC shall work together to develop an acceptable budget each year for the cooperative sports and teams. This recommendation will then be taken back to the 3 districts for approval. The second component of this process is that each school district will need to include in their own budgets 1/3 of the cost to run each program. Although the host school will pay the upfront cost, the participating schools will then be billed at the conclusion of the season for their 1/3 share of the cost. If the recommendation fails again, it will become back to the JOC. It's going to take an incredible amount of work from the administrators working together, but we also see, even if budgets were to creep up a little bit because of more players on a team, it is still going to be divided by 1/3 for each district and 1/2. It's likely to have a net savings.
Whose policies will be followed for each sport? And what if there is a contradiction between school district policies? Ultimately, the policies of the host school district are followed for the operation of each individual sports team. Each coach has a handbook to follow for their program, which details specific information concerning the individual team. But there is also an athletic handbook, which details the overall expectations for all sports teams. The administrative teams from all 3 districts would like to coordinate our athletic handbooks to make them very similar to create consistency across programs. This process would happen through this year for approval next summer when we are all approving updated handbooks. Policies, procedures pertaining to student discipline are specific to the sending school when an infraction of a student code or conduct occurs. This is the same as what happens with students at the Career Center. Also, each district has their own eligibility requirements which affect their students specifically.
Okay, and I believe this is the last question from the ones submitted. For away game transportation, will the team bus pick up all three schools or only the host school? If only at the host school, will that leave us responsible for transporting our students to the host school to catch another bus to the away game? Depending on the location of the away contest, transportation would be needed for participating schools to either the host school or the closest point for transfer. Individual districts would be responsible for the cost of transportation to this point, but all three would share the transportation costs from this point to the contest. If a contest is in Brookville, for example, the teams could meet at I-80 exit 53 and travel from there.
Okay, at this time, we'll go ahead and open up the mic. If there's any questions that the community may have at this time, we are live streaming it, so please come on down. We do have the mic so that everybody can hear you, and we do appreciate your cooperation so far. Please state your name and what school district you're from.
My name is Melissa Fulton. I'm with Keystone School District. I noticed at the beginning you had talked about that there had been a failed cooperative already between AC Valley and Karn City. And Mr. Jordan, I believe you stated that that was because transportation and time, that a lot of the kids had dropped out or didn't want to participate in that. Am I understanding that correctly?
I wouldn't necessarily call it a failed cooperative. The reason that it was so difficult was because of the timing of Karn City's day-to-day schedule with our day-to-day schedule.
Okay,
Our kids,
you actually used the word it was a failed cooperative because of the time for transportation.
I don't know that I used failed, but if I did,
So
that's an incorrect word. But again, it's because of the day-to-day schedule of Karn City's student schedule compared to our schedule because we don't release students till 3:05.
Do you know how many miles it is from AC Valley to Karn City that those kids were transporting?
I'm not sure what the mileage is.
It's 14. Do you know how many miles it is from AC Valley to Keystone?
I don't know, 19?
13. Do you know how many miles it is from AC Valley to Union?
17?
18.
18?
And Karn City to Union, also 17. So significantly more mileage for a similar co-op that didn't work.
Again, it didn't. Can I stop you just for a second? It didn't work again because of the day-to-day schedule. And when students were released from this school to go to practice at Karn City, that was already
You specifically said
started.
because of the distance and travel, but perhaps you misspoke. I can only go by what you had said. My other issue is right now we have an amazing athletic trainer that we had missed for several years. Who takes the athletic training duties? And how does that split between activities? So for example, my daughter was a dual sport this fall. She was able to do volleyball and able to do soccer. So I spent a lot of time in bleachers. And I saw Jessica wrapping soccer players, tending to them during a game, while the football players could come in during their practice, get wrapped, unwrapped, grab their ice, whatever else they need. She was able to tend to 3 or 4 teams at one time. What's that do for our athletic director? What happens to our kids at practice or games when the athletic director can only be in one, or I'm sorry, the athletic trainer can only be in one place at one time? And who covers her cost or his cost? Or is there a new athletic trainer? Do we split one? Does everybody get one? Because it took us years to get the one we have.
I understand your concerns there. AC Valley hasn't had an athletic trainer for years. We haven't been able to acquire one. We have used unions and the cost has been split.
Okay, so what does that do during the host school sports? Do they travel? Do we have 2 athletic trainers that we use now? Or are the kids that are not the host school just left without one?
Currently what we do is when AC Valley did have a trainer, excuse me, practices and stuff at the wherever the practice was, that trainer stayed
If
there.
you're live streaming, please step to the mic. But they can't. Okay.
Currently, whenever AC Valley did have a trainer, what we did was that trainer stayed at their school and did the practices for those schools at that school. If there was an event like a game, depending on the availability, then one or both the trainers went to that event and covered that. We did not want to take away from the kids who were at their schools practicing. So with two schools having trainers, obviously we'd still keep those two trainers. Hopefully AC Valley could find a trainer and have one at each school, because you're still going to have your own sports that you have to cover as well, but you would not take away the services of that trainer for your other kids. So, and so for example, if there was a game somewhere, but there were practices at home, you would not ask that trainer to leave those kids unattended at home. We would try to cover it with one of the other trainers or something to that effect. Okay?
And finally, I have 3 kids, so I spend a lot of time at the school. I understand that their academics are priority. For Keystone, my kids are lucky enough that they have a little bit of time where they can, get ready for practice. But if they have questions, need to see a teacher, need to do something before that, a lot of times they have ability to do that before they change or get ready for practice, or they can talk to the coach and say, hey, coach, I'm going to be 5 minutes late. I got to go work on a project, got to ask a question, got to do something. If we are now expecting these kids to get on a bus and travel 14, 15, 16, 18 miles one way, and then get back on the bus and come back, do you see any conflicts with kids being able to meet some of those academic questions, or essentially wasting a whole lot of time on a bus and not being able to use that time for anything else?
Well, I guess I can answer some of that. I haven't seen an increase in academic issues. I'll say that. But it's up to each individual school to look for those problem areas and give the students the support they need. There's no doubt that travel time on a bus is not a comfortable thing for anybody. 15 miles, it's 20 minutes on a bus, along with a practice and 20 minutes back. So, I'm not here to say that that's a joyride. That's not what I'm trying to say.
And finally, PIAA allows kids to be enrolled in 2 sports at one time. With the co-op, what does that look like now that practices are being switched week to week? How are kids, you want them to have more opportunities? I know I'm probably a rarity, but my daughter was able to play volleyball and soccer, which she's never done before, and enjoyed it. Gave her some things she wanted to do. So if you're taking away the possibility for students to do dual sports, aren't you in fact limiting their access to them?
Well, yeah, in some cases, that's absolutely true. However, when we talk about opportunities, it's not opportunities for a specific kid, but for all students.
I did want to jump into just briefly about the question for students being ineligible or not performing academically. And I'm deeply in depth, and I thank Mr. Salvo for sharing this information. At Union, for a group that proudly participates in a cooperative, we've only had 1 student the whole year be ineligible at any time. So our students are being met with their academic needs as well.
Hi, Danielle Lutz, AC Valley. My question is, with the amount of kids that we will have, how will all of you ensure that they're being utilized appropriately? I've been to almost every sporting event in this school, and a lot of times you see the same 11 players, the same 5, 9, whatever, out there the entire time. With a few, they get the last couple minutes of playtime. So with 3 schools, how are we going to make sure that doesn't happen? Who can we go to for that?
Public speaking, not my best.
My name is John Irwin. I'm the AC Valley Union head baseball coach. To answer that question, you're saying the opportunity for your children and to put the players on the field. Right now, Keystone has a varsity program for baseball. So you have the opportunity of 9 kids to be on the field, 10 with the designated hitter. If you put the schools together, you now have the opportunity for 4 programs. You have a 20 to 22 game varsity schedule. You have a 20 game JV schedule. You could have a 20 game 9th grade schedule, and you could have a 20 game 7th and 8th grade schedule. So there's 80 games given to your children, student athletes, to play. So there's your opportunity for more time for your student athletes.
So are you saying that it would go back and forth, like A team, B team kind of thing, or how would that work?
It would be a varsity program, a JV program, a 9th grade program, and a 7th and 8th grade program.
So you're saying there would be less kids per thing, per sport? I'm confused because like basketball, there's 5 players. If you have a team of 20 varsity players, then how are you going to ensure that of course, everyone's not going to have equal play time, but I don't think any kid that shows up to practice every single day should be slighted either. I want to win. I'm competitive, but at the same time,
that's why you have different levels.
We say that this is built for the kids, so how is it built for them? Because it seems like a lot of times it's built for a core group of 11 kids, and then everyone else we're just thrown in there.
I think when we look at the entirety of the programs, you're looking at developing kids. It is very much likely that you're going to create more opportunities for junior high programs, programs where you're likely to see more kids participate, develop them, and you can be a little more flexible on playing time. You're also going to see an increase in JV teams and the ability to run those programs. There is no doubt that at some point it might be 11th or 12th graders that may not get to play. That is an absolute reality, but it will be based on talent level and competition rather than...
How can you see someone's talent if you don't give them the opportunity to play? If you're developing the same children every game, every practice, then how can you see what somebody is capable of?
So, speaking from a guy who played college baseball and did not get to play nearly as much, the talent is quite obvious. I threw 80, he threw 90. That was it.
That's college ball. We're developing children.
In high school, it might be they throw 80, they throw 70.
Okay. So I guess my question is, if you feel that your child's not getting that opportunity, who's going to go to bat for them besides yourself? Without looking like you're a crazy mom or dad or whatever it is. Like, are you guys going to step up and say, hey, why don't you guys give this group of kids a shot? If you have 50 kids on a team, you should be putting these kids in and out on the field every few minutes to see what they can do.
Well, I can promise you, you're not going to have 50 kids at a varsity level. It's not going to happen.
There's 50 kids on Clarion's football team.
We're not.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about all sports. You know, I understand.
I can't answer for Coach Reed or Coach McNanny or Coach Mills or Coach, whoever it is. But at the baseball level, we're giving the kids more opportunities to play sports, to play, to keep the kids active. And that's what you guys want as a group, is to keep your kids active, keep them out of trouble. We're giving them 80 games. We're giving them 4 different levels to play at, where with single schools, you can't do it. Union can't do it. Keystone can't do it, and AC Valley can't do it. But if you put it together, you're getting 80 games for these kids to participate.
Okay, well, I look forward to seeing that.
I'm probably worse than John at public speaking, but the opportunities that if you're asking about a Friday night opportunity, there is nothing guaranteed on a Friday night, not at a varsity game, but there is on a Monday night on a JV. We played 2, and I would say out of 10 varsity games this year, we've had kids in every game. But at our JV level, we played 2 games this year. Position-wise, too, we got 9 offensive linemen right now on our team. That's JV and varsity owned. So you got to play 5 in a game. So that means you got to bring varsity guys down to play a JV at this time. We don't need to do that if we get 50 kids on a team. So you're able to play 10 JV games to where you're able to get that, where you're running kids in to see what their opportunities are and how good they are. And they're going to have that opportunity on a Monday night. Friday nights with the lights on, we're here to win football games. So the best 11 are going to play, and that's just the way that it is. Talent level brings it into it. I mean, we're going to try to win football games. And you're going to have the opportunity to work your way up through to where you're able to get to be one of those 11 or one of those 15 or 16. We probably play 18 or 19 kids on a given Friday night in a competitive football game. And there's film to study to show that. We can show that. But not having the opportunities on Mondays, yes, there's kids that are getting left behind right now because they're not getting the opportunity to show us. They're able to show us Monday through Thursday in practice, but they're not getting the opportunities right now. They're not getting them, it sounds like, at Keystone either. They played 0 JV games. So to be able to run a full JV schedule, to not maybe bring your 9th graders up and have them stand on the sidelines for a varsity game and then have to look those kids in the eye on a Friday night after a game and say, hey, we can't play the Monday JV game because we had 2 guys get hurt. Or you're asking kids to play 2 games in 48 hours. Like we played at Port Allegheny and had a JV game scheduled for that following Monday. So we played Saturday and then Monday. So that's what he's getting at. You're going to have 80 games to come up through in a baseball to show your worth. Right now, there's 22 varsity games, and you might have a kid that doesn't get in because it's a 3-1 ball game or whatever the case may be. They're getting in a 17-0 game. Football, they're getting in a 50-0 game. But they're not getting in at quality times like what you're saying there. So I understand your concern there, but that's what we're trying to do is give more kids more opportunities everywhere. You know, we could play maybe a 9th grade schedule or a 7th and 8th grade schedule to where we're not playing Clarion's 9th grade team with 7th graders, so on and so forth. So that's where that opportunity is going to arise. There is going to be so many more opportunities for playing time, how many snaps they get in their high school career compared to what they're getting now. That's what we want. That's how we want to, go. And it's a shame that Keystone's there. It's a shame we're here. I've been a part of this co-op since 2016, and it works. So.
Hi, my name's Brittany Gribble, and I'm a Keystone parent. I came here to find out the facts on why Keystone needs to have a co-op when we can field most sports. I have only heard about a handbook that has been worked on for hours, but no data to support the decision, including enrollment, numbers of students interested, or the effects of it financially. Before a vote goes through, we need actual facts to support this, not just the opinions of those sitting here.
So how this process got started really was because we did have to shutter a sport this year in soccer. We didn't have enough players to play that. What we wanted to do was reach out to see if there was interest in potential co-ops as we looked at some of the other sports. Right now for our football team next year, if everybody came out that played this year, and that doesn't always happen, we would have 20 students that are grades 10 to 12 on the football team next year. That would be 11 juniors and seniors, and that would only be 9 sophomores. There would be 13 freshmen coming up for 33 total. However, putting freshmen into the varsity games, you're talking about a 14, 15-year-old kid compared to an 18-year-old. At that point, man.
We're doing it now, and we did
And
very well.
we are doing that. So that is one of the decisions too, as an entire athletic council, we wanted to explore that opportunity. Baseball last year, we had difficulties getting numbers right up until the start of the season. This year, we anticipate those numbers to even be lower And so again, we'd be losing that opportunity to have a baseball team at all. So those are two of the big sports that we're looking at that we have issues, along with the sport that we've already had to shutter. And then looking at numbers in the future, we have 858 total students in our district, with grades 7 to 12 having more students than grades K to 6, meaning that we have less students coming into play for the future.
I understand that for the future, but for right now, if the numbers are there, I think we should have it on the table and have things figured out financially and everything before we jump into this. Because there's a lot of questions that need answered before we would do this.
Right, and for right now, we're saying right now our football team has some significant numbers issues moving into next year.
Lacey Smith from Union School District. I just wanted to know, before we leave here tonight, were you willing to give us those numbers that you have on that list that you held up earlier of participating students for each sport?
We could share this on our website.
I don't have that one.
Yeah, that's the problem. I don't know where Jeff's at. You have to sign it.
Whatever list he had over there.
I think it's a spreadsheet, yellow and green, Scott.
Returning. If everybody tells that comes out, that would be the total for free program. That's if every. Right.
All right, just to give you a little bit of overview on some of the numbers there, you can see the sport listed on the left. Highlighted in yellow is the current co-op sport with AC Valley and Union. In the green would be the proposed three-way co-op. The numbers going down under AC Valley, Union, and Keystone there that you can see have the current numbers in the fall sports. It's impossible to tell what the winter sports and spring sports will be, but if you scroll down there, Mr. Carlson, you can see there are some numbers that are highlighted in red. That would be the numbers from last year, spring sports, for instance, JV, varsity and JV girls basketball, minus the graduated seniors from last year. So those numbers, as an example, varsity and JV girls basketball, AC Valley Union has 5 in each of their schools, and Keystone has 18 from last year. Go on down, there's varsity and JV baseball at AC Valley Union, 15 possible this year without any that have moved up. 8 over at Union and 12 at Keystone. So we completely understand what you're saying about numbers, and we went through every one of those sports and tossed those numbers around. Numbers are a reality.
Not to cut you off, Mr. Jordan, but there are some sports where maybe Union and AC Valley, the cooperative, could still operate, but Keystone needs us. And there are some sports where Keystone.
Okay, hold on a minute. Being a basketball mom, a junior varsity basketball mom, when we came questioning whether we should merge with AC Valley in the spring, we asked the girls if they would play if we merged, if we didn't merge, like if they were coming back regardless. If we didn't merge, I believe our number was like 12. We merged, we have 12 girls going to open gym. We didn't gain anything. And I'm afraid that if you merge with Keystone, you're going to have the same thing, because you'll have the lazy kids, I get it. And then you'll have the ones that won't come out because they don't think they're going to get playing time. But you're also going to have the ones that don't come out because of the merger. So I don't think you're gaining anything. I don't think you're going to see the numbers you want to see until you have a central location where these kids have learned to play together since they were in like 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. I really don't. I mean, that's just one of the questions I had. I've got more if you're ready for it. So from my understanding, what's that? I'm saying for basketball, though. Like, I don't think you're going to see the numbers you want. And you're saying Keystone needs us, but you have 18 compared to our 5 and AC Valley's 5. What? Okay, well, whatever. And then talking to Scott Kendall, it was mentioned in the beginning about PIAA playoffs and everything being off the table, but there's another, they can still go to districts, is that correct? Or they can still go to like.
If it increases.
Okay, but this year, since we merged with AC Valley, we cannot, in girls basketball, we could not qualify for PIAA playoffs, but we could still qualify for KSAC. Okay, just wanted to clarify that. And then, can you also tell us, Mr. Kendall, in April, during the meeting here at AC Valley, and in a transportation meeting we had at Union, and in the merger meeting that was held at Union in the library, you mentioned how important it was to keep our identity. An example was like not becoming a Red Bank Valley Bulldog, because the kids that go to Red Bank that wrestle are Red Bank Valley Bulldogs. So you didn't want to lose your identity. So what changed between then and now? Because obviously if we do this, we're losing our identity.
Well, and what changed between then and now is the need for more opportunity. I mean, we're the only, like, for example, in football, only getting to play 2 JV games, I don't believe is beneficial to our program and building it for the future. That's something that changed now. We had 1 cross-country runner this year. Between the 2 schools, we were not able to run and sustain a cross-country program. Soccer gives them an opportunity to play. So losing an identity, possibly, yes. I agree with you. I would like to keep my identity. I'd like for my son to graduate a Union Knight. But as I look at this more and more and look at the numbers, I want my son to have the opportunity, and every kid to have the opportunity to play sports, not worry about whether that person is a Knight, a Falcon, or a Panther, but worry about giving them an opportunity to participate in things. So looking at it and studying the numbers more, looking at the numbers coming up, that's what changed in this, you know.
Okay, so then that'll lead to my next question, my last question. How many 9th grade football teams, baseball teams, softball teams, and basketball teams are there in our league, like in the KSAC? How many 9th grade teams are in the KSAC?
Within the 9th grade, within the KSAC, there are none. We would have to go to Brookville. Possibly, I should say that Karn City has said they would play us in some. There are closer schools like Franklin, Oil City. There are schools like that you have an opportunity to play. We're not 100%. We haven't looked into a 9th grade schedule totally because we want to see where we're at in terms of, you know, you don't want to schedule a game with somebody, then come back and say, hey, we can't participate in this game. So then the 3 of us would sit down and determine what sports we're going to look at and where those opportunities would lie. Obviously, we don't want to travel to Erie to play a 9th grade basketball game or something like that. So we would try to do things that are closer if possible.
My name's Ian Fulton. I'm with Keystone. I'm the president of the Keystone Football Boosters. So I'm going to take a little different line of questioning here, maybe more of a booster line. I guess I need to lay down a little bit of a basis here for this discussion. Probably most parents don't know how this works, is my guess. Obviously, the booster's there to boost the program mostly monetarily in manner. What is unknown probably is that if an athletic program fails, all the money is basically confiscated by the school, as well as anything the boosters has obtained for the program. By co-opting programs, by co-opting these programs, Keystone's athletic programs will be deemed a failure. If all boosters have their money confiscated, including the KMA, because that could be deemed a failure if the marching bands combine, in my estimation, Keystone acquires about $100,000 from the different booster organizations. This year, the boys on the football team took some ownership, went out, and they themselves raised a pile of money for the program. And so my questions become, what happens to our boosters? What are they supposed to start over from scratch now? The seniors, they went out and really beat the bushes for this and left themselves a legacy there for the younger kids to look up to. And I think those kids deserve that money. And the community also gave a lot of money to Keystone. They didn't give it to a co-op. So what are you going to do to earn the trust back, really, from the community and the kids on this? Because that's not what they donated their money for, in my opinion. And I don't know where AC and Union are at. Maybe they've done better. Maybe they've not. It doesn't really matter. I think their community wants their kids to have their money too. So I would like to hear some answers about that.
So my understanding of the booster clubs is that there becomes a merger between the entities. That was something that happened, I believe, when Union and AC joined together. The money, as far as I know, then would follow the athletes as opposed to a confiscation by the school district. Mr. Kimmel, I'm not sure if you could, or Dr. Kimmel, if you could elaborate.
That's correct. And maybe Mr. Kendall, you can elaborate further with the booster programs, but that money did go together. It went toward the program. So it benefits all the athletes within the program. It didn't go back to the school districts. Currently, those booster clubs would work together. So for example, the band boosters, they alternate or work together for football events. So they collect that money, and we came up with a sharing of that money for both programs.
So basically, I've been involved with this co-op since it started. And this year, Union girls became part of our competition squad. It started last year. And this year, we merged their booster money with our booster money. I look at all these kids the same. I love them all. It doesn't matter what school they go to. I coach track as well, and I feel the same way about it. And we did it for football as well. We merged the Falcon money and the Knight money, and we haven't had a problem. Unfortunately, we only have about 5 parents that show up for the football booster meeting, and we would love more people. So can I answer any of your questions as far as how the money went together?
Well, my issue is that Keystone has a history of doing this. They did it with the wrestling program when they specifically wanted that money to go with the kids whenever they co-opted with Clarion. So it's not really so much a question of what happens with that. Is I'm curious to hear what Keystone themselves has to say about this, because their history isn't real good here. Okay?
I understand. I just wanted, as far as boosters go, I could answer that
Yeah.
question. I'm involved in 2 of them. So.
And that was a question I've already asked and got that answer to from Keystone. Okay, that I've asked the question, what happens to the money, and they say technically the school gets it. You know, that question has been posed. So by the rules that are handed down, that is what is supposed to happen. That's what's in our bylaws. Okay, I'm not, you know, I'm not doubting anything there that you're telling me. My question is for Keystone, because that's the problem, child.
I can just answer questions about Union AC Valley.
Understood. And then my other questions are, you know, has anybody ever questioned the students at Keystone about low participation rates? Why they're not going out, you know, and what they can do to fix it? You know, no, I haven't heard that discussion yet. And the other thing is the new PIAA rules come out of how they count students and everything. How's this going to factor in? You know, this is a different way of doing things. How does that factor in? I haven't heard anything about that either. I think there's a whole lot of questions here that need to be answered. I mean, this is great. You got a little plan going, but in reality, there's a lot of questions that are out there that are not being answered, that need addressed. Questions like these.
So you asked several questions. Mr. Best and I think, will answer. First off, I don't know anything about what happened with Clarion Wrestling. That was several years ago. It was before I was here. However, my question back to you is, as students raise the money, my understanding is that money should be spent on the students who raised it through the boosters.
Yes, but by rule, even that tracking money, that portion that they get a portion of it, okay? But by rule, that tracking money goes away too.
So any monies that are left in boosters will be joined together if sports are co-opted through that. They'll be joined together with boosters. The school districts will not take any of that money. So that will be with the students and the participating athletes. You had a question about asking athletes about the numbers, and we did ask athletes. Mr. Best, I think you can help share that answer, correct?
Yes, I can. I actually had the opportunity just last week to talk to a varsity senior football player from Keystone. And I asked that question. I said, what can we do differently to increase numbers at Keystone? He told me that, in his opinion, not prompted by anyone else, he felt that it was due to lack of desire to put the effort forth by students. Had nothing to do with coaching. He didn't feel that the school was doing anything. He just felt that they weren't willing to put the time in. This is football, to do the double days, to go to those practices and put that time. That is a student's perspective. And on that note, I also talked to a baseball player. Not a senior, but I talked to a Keystone baseball player who actually felt that this would be a good move for us. He said they're very young. He thinks that adding some of that older talent from the other teams would be beneficial to them as well. So I've had the opportunity to at least talk to 2 different students.
And I would say that I have a son that played baseball last year and came home and said, well, I don't even know if I want to do that. It's not the same group. And he's very unsure about the whole situation because of the co-op. So I'd also think that you're going to have tainted numbers now too, because that's out there. There's a lot of uncertainty, especially among Keystone kids, where they have no idea what this is about. I mean, heck, the parents don't know what it's about.
I can add to your comment there regarding these numbers specifically. And you're absolutely correct. Once a co-op happens, there are some students that just are not interested in participating. But however, on the flip side, there are students that all of a sudden they want to participate because, let's be honest, there are some students that sign up for athletics because they really are a competitive person and they want to win. There are other students that participate because they want to be part of a winning team. And there are even some students that participate in athletics because it's a social event for them. So there are lots of different reasons why kids come out. I can tell you from the AC Valley perspective that Dave Sherman, the athletic director, and myself beat the bushes all the time to try to get kids to participate. We want to see it, but it's just, I don't know whether it's a new generation or what it is. It is difficult to get kids interested in doing something as far as athletics.
Well, part of that probably comes from, in the last few years anyway, we had to shut down for the ridiculousness of COVID. And so now kids got away from it and they got lazy. They don't want to get back into it for whatever. But
that you're absolutely right. That could be part of it. I can tell you that I have a group of students here at the high school, boys. There are more of them playing online games together every night than what we have running cross country. That's just a fact. And just to answer one of your other questions regarding the change in PIAA counting, it's a one-to-one count. In other words, what happened prior to this year was that a lot of districts they didn't have to count students that were homeschooled, students that were cyber, those kinds of students, and those numbers, the PIAA saw that they were being manipulated to push schools' classifications down instead of up. And so now they changed it to where it's called one-to-one, where we have to count those. When I submitted my enrollment numbers last month, it included every student in the district that is homeschooled, cyber, charter, and public school. So that's the difference. And we use those numbers, myself and the athletic directors and Mr. Carlson, to look at what our classification would be if we were to, co-op in some of these sports. Okay. Thank you for your questions.
We do have 5 minutes remaining, just a reminder.
we did not co-op in very many sports at all, actually, until just the last couple of years. We started with football because here at AC Valley, we started out our last year as AC Valley Falcons with 22 kids on our football team. And by the time, let me finish, but by the time we got into week 3, I think it was, we were down to 17 kids that were healthy and playing. And I can tell you, we had 0 JV games, and we were having injuries all the time because kids playing both sides of the ball. There are just a lot of things that are involved when it comes to collision sports like football. They could go down or they could go up. Again, we just co-op.
I don't think we can hear you. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Abby Simchek. I'm with Keystone. I'm also the Golf Club Booster president. And I kind of am echoing what Ian said, but the Golf Club boosters and any booster club, we do make a lot of money. How would the concession stands be split? Because you're going to have home games at 2, then home games at 2, one home game. So that is a big concern because I know like the Music Association, the football team, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know for sure, but they do split those funds and they make several thousands of dollars. So if it's not a home game at Keystone and it's a home game at Union or AC Valley, who's going to run that? Who's going to do the logistics of that? Our golf team, like we do one big scramble, it's a big event. The logistics of us just doing a Keystone scramble, we don't have the parent participation that we get. It's usually the 4 officers and a few parents. So we're trying to put all that together, and logistically, it's difficult with booster clubs because I know someone else said we have 5 parents that show up for our booster meetings. It's hard. So how are you going to logistically get people to sign up for these concession stands? And how are you going to divide the money up? Is it the home team's money that they get to keep that for that sport? Or is it all going into one bucket for the whole team? And then you have, I know with us, I'm pretty sure marching band and football, they split that concession. We have like 100 people on our marching band team. So then if you don't combine marching bands, you're going to have 2, 3 marching bands play at the football game. Because a lot of our kids do marching band too. So it's affecting more than just sports. When you talk sports, you're talking not just sports, it's extracurricular. So that being said, and then my other question was cost of transportation to and from practices. Have you put all of that into like the budget? Because I talked to a principal about East and West Forest County schools. They spend $12,000 a month on transportation for co-oping. So I didn't know how that was going to fit into the budget. And then last, because I'm trying to make this quick in case someone else wants to talk. Overall, I go into all Clarion County schools every day. Kids have a couple complaints. One, they say there's nothing to do. And the other one in Clarion County, our biggest barrier is transportation. So maybe in our communities, we need to try and figure out how we can eliminate those transportation barriers because maybe kids aren't playing sports and getting out there because they can't get to the school or they can't get home from practice because they don't have a parent at home. So maybe we need to try and focus our money on what we can do to get kids home from practice. I don't have these answers, but I feel like overall, there's something else. Not saying that co-op's not the answer, but it's not the answer for the kids that still can't come to practice and get home from practice. So I feel like there's still a portion of kids that are still getting left out. They can't do it because parents aren't there at home to come pick them up or get them to the games. So it's more than just one answer.
Maybe we need to evaluate why Clarion County has 7 school districts and a population of 37,000, and 18% of that is under the age of 18. That's part of what our kids do.
Answer is coming for her.
It's 8 o'clock.
I was just trying to hurry. I don't know if they have answers for all of that, but I know we're short on time, so if somebody else has more questions, just shoot them off.
But I can answer a couple of your questions. One, the transportation budget, we are working through different scenarios to have that transportation budget. Our business manager is working for that, and we want to have that here as quickly as possible because we want to provide that to our athletic committee and board members. The transportation home is actually something that is of concern, that we want to make sure that our transportation that we take the students to the other schools, we'll bring them back to the schools. As far as getting them from the school then to their homes, we haven't had that. I know some school districts across the state have done like a late bus system, things like that. I'm not sure if that's something that we would want to pursue as a board or not. Finally, I believe your other question was about revenue sharing for the concession stands. And that's basically what it would be, is revenue sharing. So it's the teams that co-op together would be a revenue sharing of those concession stands, because that would still go through to the combined booster clubs and still get to the money to the students and the kids.
Okay, folks, it's 8 o'clock. We are going to conclude the meeting. I do encourage you to reach out to your school board member, either at the voting meeting on November 20th or before so. All the school board information is on your website. Share your opinion, whether you're for or against the co-ops. As you can tell, there's a lot of work that went into this program this evening, and we just want the best for our kids. So please share your opinion. It's greatly valued. And again, I do thank these school board members for everything that they do.
Is all this stuff going to be on the website so we can actually view it? This graph along with the handbook?
Each school?
Good. Or not each, they're on the district websites.
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Agreed.
It's not really fair to put a time limit on that question.
Yep.
Haven't been answered. We kind of
Okay. All right. Hey, Dan Cosper here, the Keystone student. So I just got a couple clarification questions maybe on the handbook that was presented there. So it's going to be rotation each school home depending on what sports, right? And each sport is going to be voted on individually. Is that correct? This isn't every single one of those that was on the board. Individually with
Individually.
with
Yes, we have
parents,
22 different items.
with parent and input whether to go or not on each one. Is
It's
that
before your
gonna
boards,
happen?
so your boards can have that
They're
parent
gonna
input. Yes.
listen. Okay. Now, the screen breakdown that you showed there with all the lists, like there was some definite, if this is a percentage thing, and that is the home school that's in charge of hiring the coach. I think that was the screen I seen. Like Keystone had soccer. Then it was like Union, AC Valley. Like, why isn't it 33% equal across the board? You know?
I don't know.
So that's not golden.
That's just the one who's responsible for the payment. They're the ones that take care of paying.
But they're going to hire the coach, right?
Yes, they would be. So
if Union's going to hire, or Keystone's going to hire the coach, Union doesn't have a say in the coach.
The JOC will 33%.
Which is member of each one.
That's correct.
And that will be breakdown of 33%, not what I saw on the
Yes,
screen.
that's correct. The host school, here, I'll give it to Scott. He can explain.
For the rules.
The only thing the host school does is they're the school that has to fill out the paperwork and send it in. That's the only reason there's a host school on there, because we'll rotate our practices, we'll rotate our games. The joint operating committee.
They're not the hiring for the coach and
Well,
C.
yes, but the JOC is the one that makes the recommendation. There are 9 members of the JOC, 3 from each district. They will make the recommendation of who the coach is going to be, who they're going to hire, and then that person gets hired just for
Through the 3 schools.
correct.
Basically.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Not that
It would not be
breakdown.
union hiring all the coaches. No.
Okay. So that clarification. And then the other little thing that I heard was if you didn't offer a sport, it was against the PIAA rules or something like that. There was something that you were not, if you didn't offer an opportunity, I felt like you were talking, then you were breaking the rules or disappointing something. Yeah, something with that or the PIAA. But actually, if you don't offer a sport, say Keystone doesn't have soccer for men, for boys, they have to actually allow them to go to another school and play, right? That's not true? You just, that kid can't play soccer at all.
And that's PIAA. That is not Keystone. That is not AC Valley. We've looked into that.
But you're not breaking the rules. The PIAA isn't coming down the hammer on Keystone because they just don't have the numbers.
No, we have to offer the program.
We offer wrestling, we do, but it's only co-op, right?
It's a co-op. Yeah, it's co-op. Our numbers went low, so we co-opted in wrestling.
Soccer, boys?
We tried to do that for this year. And it was also, we've shuttered the girls program for a season here and there.
So do we not have boys soccer?
We have boys soccer. We didn't play a schedule because we didn't have enough players. We only had 9 players. What's that?
The option was off.
Yeah, the opportunity was
better
there.
to let them go somewhere else? Just that.
We can't.
Oh, okay.
The only thing we could do now is co-op, and that's why a lot of this, we're in this position now is because, yeah.
Because I mean, I'm thinking like I heard opportunities, you know. I know Franklin has 7th and 8th grade baseball, which is awesome for those kids. And we talk about kids getting opportunities and shining, you know, that'd be great. It'd be great to see JV also, but I just was a little confused with that whole breakdown up there. Like I was, woo. So, I don't know. Let's see. Thank you.
Thank you for staying. I appreciate it. I have 4 quick little questions. One's a yes, no, so it doesn't need a dramatic thing. Are we within the next 5 years looking at district lines changing with our school districts? Is that a reason as to why we might have chosen to go this route? Yes or no?
We've had no official conversations about those things.
Okay.
However, I do know most schools in Clarion County have talked about the necessity to merge at some point, just based upon finances. And I'm glad Abby asked, some of those questions about finances. Where we're spending most of our money that isn't really impacting our kids is in cyber education. And I'm going to take every chance I can to make that comment in public. There's House Bill 1422. It's sitting on the Senate Education Committee right now. We have some local senators that could be pushing that forward. It would save Clarion County schools nearly $2 million per year. We're not spending that in our districts in sports.
Okay, great.
So that would help to be able to finance some of those things.
My second question is earlier in the handbook, it wasn't the first set of charts with the X's and Y's. It was the second one where we had the estimated amount, or not estimated, the amount of kids allowed for the sport. Like football, it said 35. It was the second set of graphics.
That was to add additional coaches. That was a number. If we had more than that number of students, we would go over that minimum number of coaches.
Okay, so my next little quick question going off of that. So cheers, my understanding, has no limited number because if it's not, within 4 lines, whatever. But with the bands, we have finally joined with Union, and we have finally gotten reestablished as AC Valley is getting our numbers and our band back up. And I know that Keystone, if I'm correct, it has a very large band themselves. Now, if we're merging, how are you planning on doing the bands? Because right now, as a co-op, we do 2 of the alma maters. And for everybody in the stands, half of us want to, yay, and half of us want to, oh my goodness, there's 2 alma maters. Is there going to be 3 now? So that's part 1 of my question. Well, yes, but our numbers also changed with our marching bands once we had a different director. to the best of my knowledge, and this, to the best of my knowledge, I do know there's intent for others going. So really, what was the question? I'm sorry, now that I'm on the.
We were down in the band, and once we co-op, now our numbers are finally going back up. So it sounded like the band co-op really worked.
9 ladies last year, and now we're all combined, and we're what? 55.
That's awesome.
Yes. Sorry, didn't know where you were going with that. I didn't forget my question.
So it was a question about alma maters and
Well, what
joining
do you
together.
what is your vision for the bands? You have 3, or you have 2 bands right now, 1 merged. How what are we looking at?
Well, to be honest, we've talked about band on a small scale. We haven't gone into it completely because, as was mentioned earlier, there's really no purpose in talking about band unless football is combined, because the marching band is essentially performing at those football games at halftime.
True.
Essentially, we would look to do a very similar process as to what we've currently done with AC Valley and Union, tried to allow the retainment, I guess, of some of that identity, but still forming one cohesive program that's working together.
So we're not looking to reduce the size of band members if they all.
No.
So with that being said, how many buses does Keystone Band take to every game? 2, and we are what? 1. We were 2. So if we're adding more and adding more, have we considered those cost expenses? Because both of them are going to need to get shipped to, I'm assuming, the same home practice field, rotated like everybody else, like they do now at AC Valley and Union. And so that is going to double, if not triple. And I understand we're splitting it all up, but are we looking at that kind of stuff?
In general, for band, we do the band camp in the summertime, and then most of the practices are the day of the game.
Mhm.
So they're meeting at a central location as to where they are going to leave from to go to the game anyway. So that busing is already being used for those particular days and that
Okay, I just
So
wanted to make
we
sure
have
we weren't
discussed that, but
decreasing
we
or
haven't,
limiting.
again, we haven't finalized everything.
Of course, yes. Did that one. Last one. Okay, don't hate me, coach. Weren't the JV games this year and last year, we only played a very select amount of few because the other teams canceled, i.e. because I know this for Keystone, that there were varsity team members that were down and injured and out, and they didn't have enough JV to fill it, and they didn't want to do a threat, not lose anymore else, because then they would have nobody. Is that true about what happened with JV this year?
I'm going to try and answer your question that I think you're asking me. The games were canceled on 2 different bases. One was maybe the other school didn't have enough.
Okay.
Last year, not this year. This year, we did not feel we had enough linemen to adequately block for the running backs, receivers, quarterbacks to safely play a game for the JV level.
Okay.
So last year, yes, there may have been times because we had enough what we felt linemen to do this, and I'm speaking for Chris. Am I correct in this? We did have enough, but other teams canceled on us last year.
Okay.
This year we did the canceling because we didn't feel we could safely put those student athletes out there and play a JV game with where we were at numbers of linemen. Because as he told you earlier, we had 9 linemen on our team. You have to have 5 in there, and that left us with 4. Then you had to bring a varsity starter down, which.
Understood. Yeah. So with this merger, on what we're looking at and trying to establish an actual JV team and a 9th grade team and all the other teams, and getting more playing time, are we going to actually have that with the merger? Did the other schools have JV in the not district?
Yes, I know what you're saying.
Yes.
In the league, yes. There were, and these guys can go with me on this, and on any given week, there are 2 or 3 emails sent around from schools within a decent distance saying, hey, we lost our JV game due to this. Is anybody willing to play?
And this is for the next level that we would be looking at technically for the merger?
Yes.
Okay.
One of the nice things about JV is we're not given that schedule per se.
Oh, I know. It's very fun to schedule with the husband that works in Pittsburgh.
Yes. Oftentimes, the three of us are looking for those JV games. Now, I'm not talking basketball. I'm talking specifically football. We go out there and even though we're given a schedule, we may only have 2 or 3 teams on that schedule. So we have to fill in. And then, like you say, Keystone canceled on them. So, we're always looking.
And I lied. I have one thing. It's just a statement, not a question. I know we've heard from some people that they've talked to a player or of this or that or 1 or 2. Why haven't we done like a tri-school survey like we have done at AC Valley in the past on questions? A very generalized thing so we can get a public consensus of where everybody is in the districts. And you can also very easily put it as with the kids also. And you could have a nice little comment section. I know, not probably very fun, but you can ask maybe the kids specifically, if something has changed, would you be considering yada, yada, yada. But it's just a thought. And thank you very much. Thank you all. Are you up? You done?
I'm George Hayden from Union. Let me preface, these co-ops have been happening for decades. It's not new. Like one lady was talking about East Forest, West Forest, great example. This whole thing's a Band-Aid for Northwest Pennsylvania. It's not a fix. And I think someone already brought it up. We need to draw new lines. And even that's going to be difficult because we are spread out to the 4 winds. But I appreciate where you guys are going with most of this, but I think what's really driven this home for this area is the 3 Clarion schools combined in their football and just devastating everybody. And that's where I have an issue with this, is because there's too much emphasis on football for one, but sports in general. I think we need to focus more on the academics, and we need to focus. Transportation is always going to be an issue. That's number one thing we need to figure out right there. Redrawing the lines and figuring out whatever we can do with transportation. Look at academics. These kids go to school from like 8 to 2:30. We're the only country in the world that does this. For the outside world, I'm sorry. Sports, yes, there's a lot of stuff in there that will help them throughout their life, but it's not the end all be all. We all know that. We all know what state our country is in right now, and there's a lot more we could be doing for our kids than sitting here back and forth on sports. The other issue with this is, if I'm understanding, you guys are trying to make this as flexible as possible. So 1 year we need X amount of people for football for this. We need basketball 1 year. You guys are talking about transitioning uniforms and all this. How are we going to do that flexibly, economically?
The co-ops are a 2-year thing and a 2-year agreement, and then those co-ops are only terminated if one of the schools, or in this case, one of the 3 schools, would decide to end that co-op. We do have a cycle that we've put together to provide uniforms with whatever the new team mascot colors are that would put it in for each sport. I mean, we're certainly not going into this thinking it's going to be a 2-year agreement. Could it be? Absolutely. I mean, could numbers blow up for whatever reason and do that? Yes, but history has told us with our co-ops with AC Valley, we've needed more because of the declining population. So we have a rotation schedule for who's going to get uniforms this year, then next year, that each school does very similar with their different sports, and we would then buy them on that, so you're not facing like 5 sports right at one time. It would be a rotation basis. And again, as I think Dr. Kimmel pointed out earlier, if a booster club or sport wants to fundraise money and provide those uniforms earlier, certainly they could, but the 3 districts would then pay 33% of providing those uniforms on a rotational basis. Does that answer your question?
Thanks for the questions, though, about academics and comments, because we preach those things all the time. And we appreciate that you feel the same way.
Yeah, the other issue is, like band, for instance, you have over 100 kids trying to do this, or let's, a softball team that's got 35 girls. All those girls are putting effort in. They're coming, or they're, at least they're coming to practice. Maybe, like you said, maybe it's a social thing. Maybe they're, they're competitive. Whatever the case is, they're there. They're showing up. The parents are putting time in and spending the fuel money, the gas money to get there and back. But then they're not playing. They're getting benched the entire time. So now you just potentially lose X amount of athletes the next year because of this. So it's going to be a constant roller coaster. I mean, I'm sure it always is, but I think it's going to be something you're going to have to pay a lot more attention to. You're going to have to hone in. You're going to have to you're going to have to break up the numbers somehow. Not every sport's going to need, football, you guys always need numbers because everybody keeps getting injured. How many TBIs we have to keep doing this? But, some sports you can only have 9, basketball, you only have a few players on the game. You have 30 sitting there in the bleachers. That's not fair to them.
That's part of the reason we want to add the different programs at the junior high level and the JV programs is a developmental program, because oftentimes we'll have a 9th grader who comes out who's just overly weak for their level, and they kind of lose interest because they didn't get to play a whole lot at the varsity level because we only had enough players to run a varsity team. And then they grow a foot as a 10th grader, and now they're one of the strongest kids, but they lost interest halfway through the 9th grade year because they weren't getting on the varsity floor. Say it's basketball, you can't play a 4'9" person down low. So I think the idea is to be able to add JV programs to keep more kids interested longer.
But what about, okay, if we keep doing this merging, how far do we got to keep driving? Because it's not us. It's a whole Northwest Pennsylvania is going to keep doing this. We're going to be busting out to Harrisburg here very soon for games. So I just
Fort Allegheny's far enough. We get it.
Yeah, I just think that this is a Band-Aid that schools and districts have been trying to implement for decades now, and we're to the point where it's no longer working. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. I am Emmett Fye. I am a Keystone student, and I hope it stays that way. But last year, before this school year started, I had to sit down with Mr. Best and Mr. Hall about soccer and how I wasn't going to have a season this year. So I'm looking at the numbers up there, the 0, 0, and the 9. 3 of those being seniors this year. So that would more realistically be 6 next year. Is the 9th graders thing throughout all sports? No 9th graders on any varsity team? Okay. So with those numbers also declining due to the seniors leaving, and with some of the sports not having any 9th graders, would there be any issues with not having a team despite of that? I don't know, I'm asking that right, but like with soccer, if we don't have enough 9th graders to sign up as well, and nobody from Union or AC additionally from that, is there still a possibility of not having a team?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
The soccer is 11. on the field. I think we agreed earlier at the athletic council, we'd like to see 14, 15 on because of injuries and whatnot. We tried 1 year with 13. To me, it failed only, not for the kids, but to me, it became a safety issue because we were playing 9 against 11. In some of those games, you may have been part of that. I'm not sure how, when we played, some of them would not reciprocate and only play 9 on 9. And we can't control that because it's that. But if there isn't enough, that's one of the main sports we were looking at least from Keystone's standpoint, that we could help perpetuate having a soccer program. Unfortunately, like you say, in our co-ed or junior high right now, our numbers of males are not that great. At that, Coach Mount's still here. Am I not correct with that?
Eighth grade boys are moving up.
8. Okay, so that would be, hopefully that would, along with anything we get, how many do you want? You want 25 or so on a soccer program? That would be great, I think. Absolutely, and that's something that, would be an ultimate goal, is to, we have the junior high, then can we add JV? But unfortunately, to answer that question, if the numbers aren't there and a co-op does or doesn't go through, we're back at that. That doesn't mean that program goes away. We had that discussion at our athletic council. If we don't have a program for that year, does that go away forever? No, it does not. We'll keep that. We keep that. The only thing that happens is we don't send our eligibility to PIAA. And they just take that off and they don't look for that. So, yeah, right. And then, so does that answer?
Yeah, and I have another one. Kind of forgot it, but because of this co-op happening, if we don't have the numbers for a program, would that take away any co-op options with any other schools for that specific program?
Not necessarily. One of the things we did, that was one of the first things, and I'm not going to get into a lot of detail right here for everybody. I spent a lot of time trying to get a co-op. I think if you were at that meeting, weren't you? Different schools, and there were a couple schools that would take us, but logistically, I think, like Dr. Jordan talked about, the timing, our students would have missed every 11th period class for an entire 9 weeks to make that co-op happen. And to echo the sentiment of the gentleman that was just here, we are, believe it or not, we're in the education business. That is our primary goal. We unanimously did not feel that co-op would work because of that. But you have to understand, the only way you can co-op with another school is if your borders are contiguous. So we're limited. We tried Cranberry with Oil City. We tried CL. They would take us, but their numbers increased. They couldn't do the playoffs, so they rejected us. Same way with Red Bank. In fact, to drive to Red Bank was probably not an option either. But we would not completely shut it out. We could still look. Okay?
That's all.
Thank you.
What's that? We do all 3, but we would dissolve that co-op. Well, what were your numbers like?
We've only set 1 because
It was a girl, correct?
Just a girl.
And then
Because
AC.
this, we would hope to be able to provide transportation, and I know there was some interest. I've had several kids express, they were junior high kids.
Yeah.
But I've had several kids express some interest in joining soccer. boys and girls, because it's an opportunity they don't have right now. A lot of them play for the River Strikers. Strikers. And they would like to continue their soccer careers, but because logistically, we require our parents to get the kids over to Red Bank right now. Whereas if this would go through as we're proposing, hopefully we could throw them on a bus with the football, wherever they're going, and then, or we have enough that we have vans that we can get them there. But there is definitely some interest from Union. Again, younger kids, but I think there's a couple older kids too who'd be interested. We think it's a great opportunity for our kids.
Was the one that went this year a senior?
We did not send anybody this year. She was a senior last year. And wishes, I gotta be honest with you, her comment to me is, I wish I would have done this sooner because she absolutely loves soccer.
Yeah. What were the AC Valley numbers in Karn City in the last couple of years? Bill, you have that?
I don't have that on hand, but if I recall correctly, when we first started co-oping with them, we had 2 boys and I think 3 girls. The last year that we co-opted with Karn City, it was just 1 single girl. And again, we didn't provide transportation for her either. She drove herself, and that of course created issues.
Something I would ask, if we go through with this, whatever the sport is, those coaches get the opportunity to go to each of the schools and talk.
We encourage that. Yeah, we encourage that. We set up time to meet with
I'm a
them.
junior high soccer coach at Keystone, so what I like to do is, when the 6th graders come visit for the 7th grade orientation, I like to speak to them then, and then we started doing all the winter sports at that time.
We do that with football as well, and it works out pretty well.
That's a really important aspect. When you look at this, I think when we sent our kids to Clarion Wrestling, I don't think the Clarion Wrestling coach ever came to Keystone. I might be wrong on that, but I don't know if he actually got involved.
Oh, really? But was that the first time, so, yeah. So, I mean, I think one of the things looking forward is any coach who's going to be responsible for this program, one of the things that would be responsible for is we want you, regardless of what your school district you're from, that you're going to start building those programs in those other schools and getting those kids like elementary nights. And, we're going to want to see those kinds of things. But to answer your question, we've discussed that and would highly encourage it.
And maybe I can just add one last thing. Should the boards approve this, it's no guarantee then, and I think it was mentioned, but there's no guarantee beyond that. This will go then to District 9 in the PIAA for their final approval. There's no guarantee. They'll do the same thing that our boards are going to do. They're going to look at each program on the merit of what is given to them. Numbers, financial, there's a whole list of things that we have to provide. Just because our board picks, say, 7 of the 12, whatever, and it goes to PIAA District 9 first, they could reject any or all of them, or approve all of them. So nothing is ever final till it's final. So,
Hello, I'm Kelly Gooden, Keystone parent. Not much of a public speaker either, so. I guess the question I have that concerns me about my children is like risk over reward. Did you guys like quantize like the risk associated with me? I would say all of the traveling. Like there's a lot of traveling 5 days a week, if they're depending on the sport, and this goes for anybody going anywhere from Keystone or wherever. But did you guys quantitate any of that? Because I really enjoy the fact that my children go to Keystone. It would be any school, wherever I was going to school, but then they have an after-school activity at that school. I mean, I like that. I mean, I know where they're at. They're not traveling in the wintertime in a bus. The bus generally safe, but there's risk associated with that. And that's important to me as a parent. And like the gentleman in front of me, not Emmett, he had some good points, sports aren't the end all, like I want my son to be able to go to work and provide, I want to be able to hunt. I like him. If he can't be in soccer, which mine couldn't be in soccer, he was with Emmett. Okay. But you know what he did? Other things. There's other things at the school, believe it or not, than the sports. I appreciate the sports are very well. I mean, I'm with him in baseball. I mean, it gets pushed, you know. But did you guys do any assessment on the risk associated with that?
Yes. We've thought, I mean, again, we've put a lot of time and effort into thinking of, I mean, obviously, we're not going to think of everything, but we did. We realized that the travel was there, but again, and I'm speaking from this perspective, we felt that the travel time was not, it's great, but it was more important to give the kids opportunities, because to be quite honest with you, they're not going to have these opportunities. You know, there may not be a football team. I mean, I'm just being honest. If Union School Board said, we're not going to do this co-op between the three, we cannot sustain our own football program. We cannot sustain our own baseball program. We had 6 players, 5 players, guys back there. We have never put more than 6 players on the team, maybe 8 this year. One's iffy. So we can't give any of those opportunities to our kids. That's not what we're looking for. We're trying to not, you know, it's not just about giving the sporting opportunity, but it's the life lessons that come with these athletics or other extracurriculars, not just that. So yes, we have thought about, yes, there is travel time. I go through it right now with my own child, travel time and so forth. But we feel the reward and the opportunities for these kids outweighs that, and it's very important. And as it was said earlier, these kids are all friends. I mean, whatever that social media stuff is, they do back and forth. They all know each other. They all play baseball together. They play football together. They've done all this. So to them, the ride on the bus is, 15, 20 minutes, half hour, and it's worth it to them to be able to participate in something that they enjoy. So yes, we have certainly thought about that. We've tried to think of everything we can think about with the kids as the center focus of everything. Never any member sitting up here, we all have kids. So we have thought about that and agonized over this and spent hours and hours and hours before we brought any type of proposal to anybody, because we want to make sure what we're doing is kid-centered, and that's what we've tried to do.
And I appreciate that. And I just feel, in my opinion, like everybody here, I think the risk outweighs the reward. And the other question that I had was with recruitment. Like, you guys put in a lot of hours. You stated many, many hours, and I commend you guys for that. You're really putting in what your due diligence, right? What if we did that towards recruitment? What would that be looking like? And you got the spark going, like everybody's like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to do this, or, let's get our kids out there instead and make that work at our school. Because look at if they don't agree with this, look at what's going to happen. They're going to go be traveling and stuff like that. So the spark is there. Why don't we, okay, let's, what can we do for recruitment? And I'm sure there's some there, but what can we do to this extent where you guys, I want to say, like, let's get this going, because,
Well, we do recruit. I mean, I hesitate to use the word recruit, because when the PIAA hears that rings off bells. We do encourage kids to participate not only in athletics, but we encourage them to participate in extracurriculars, whether that be band, choir, travel club, whatever that may be. We encourage them to do that. We encourage them to participate in athletics. We realize the importance of that as educators, as parents, as board members, whatever it may be. So we do encourage kids to participate. But I can tell you that, having done this since 2001 as an athletic director, I also know that we can encourage kids to participate. We might get 6 or 8 of those kids to participate and say they're going to be on the team, but then whenever the rubber meets the road, you may get 2 or 3 of those kids that actually stick it out, and then you could be in a situation where you are not able to offer that program. And that's the last thing we want to have happen. As I stated a few minutes ago, I see very few of the sports we're proposing that we can stand alone and offer at Union for a significant number of years, if any years. So we do encourage kids to participate. We think it's important to participate not just in athletics, but in all extracurriculars, as well as do well in their academics. So we are doing that and doing our due diligence in that area as well. Sometimes it just doesn't work out and they don't stick with it.
Understand, just was bringing that. That was something that I was thinking of. Thank you. Sorry.
Mine's going to be real quick. Mine's not about numbers. Mine's more financial. At the beginning of the season, we are transporting kids from AC Valley to Union, Union to AC Valley. We didn't have the funding to do this. Our board was panicking. They asked our football boosters to pay for the busing, thousands of dollars from the boosters, which, you know, we want our kids to play. We need our kids to get there safely. So we were going to do it. That shouldn't have been asked of the boosters. That's not our responsibility. That's the schools. Then you're adding in another school. You're going to have a bus from AC Valley go to Keystone. You're going to have a bus from Union go to Keystone every day, just for football. Then you're going to add in a bus for volleyball, a basketball, track. That's going to be more money. That's going to be more financial. How's that going to happen? Are the boosters going to be asked to pay for that too?
So when we put this together, or the original thought was we've got to have practices. Sorry. The original thought was to have practices all in one location by season, but as this progressed, we started to think, man, that's a lot to ask a kid from Union to go to Keystone all fall, or a kid from Keystone to come to Union all spring, or whatever it may be. So the practices would rotate by week, just because you got to have equipment in the right spots and things of that nature. But because we are setting priority and we believe we can run all of the programs during the spring and the fall at the same time, say roughly 4 o'clock, that would give time to do transportation. We can put all of those kids on one bus and send them one direction, as opposed to putting, you know, having football here and soccer there and another sport in AC Valley. We would use vans to supplement that, whether we need to send an additional van or somebody needs to send an additional van. We also know we're going to need vans for golf and things of that nature. But we have put in some numbers where we think we're going to be basically close to cost neutral of what Union spent this year by doing this co-op in 2 different locations, because we're already doing it.
But like Friday nights for football games, you said you're going to meet in a local area to transport these kids to, say, Brookville. You're going to have a bus from AC Valley, Union, and Keystone driving to Brookville?
Potentially, if we found that was financially, well, if you needed 3 buses because you had 100 players, yeah, you would probably need that. We probably would combine. Thinking football, you'd probably need 2 buses if we get to that 50, 60 number. We would combine. We also know there would probably be 2, maybe 3 band buses, and there would, you know, the cheerleaders would fit in where we could. So it's possible, we know that those are going to be, but those are already costs that are spent every Friday night by Keystone, that are spent every Friday night by AC Valley and by Union, but we're going to then divide that equally among the districts.
So where's all this money coming from whenever Union was panicked for money at the beginning of the year? How did we miraculously find this money?
It's going to be the same cost. It's going to be cost neutral. It's not going to cost us anything more to do a 3 school than what we're spending on 2 schools.
Okay. gonna take buses from those schools.
Keystone's gonna have some costs. We're already, Union and AC are already spending money for grant.
Just real quick, my name is Julie Myers. I am a parent from AC Valley. Mine's not a question, just more of a statement. Guys, keep in mind that if this does pass, we are raising tomorrow's leaders. So please try to keep a positive attitude throughout this. These kids are under enough pressure as it is. So if this does go through, just try to remain positive, encouraging, and just try to be on their side no matter what.
Might be a real good time to wrap it up. Thank you for everything tonight. You've been a great crowd. And again, let's do this for the kids. Thank you.
David was on last week's list. He wasn't able to attend, so he was not on this week's list because of. So I get why. Yeah, but then they won't be on. Well, I would say even every other weekend, or maybe weekend off, because so they don't have any. Like we keep getting more kids. So he can do it. Well, I want to make sure he gets in there. I'll send the week, send the list out. And hopefully, the weeks that I said, we'll get him. So
like he'll already be on there. I don't need to.
He's already on our list, up to the nice list. We'll rotate him through. Like some of the kids can't go next week, so he'll be on there.
All right, thanks.
And the other reason, Mike.
How you doing?
Good. I forgot your money. It's sitting in my office. Yeah. That's it. I was sort of just I can't get on my block. Next weekend, you guys always get it on Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, this BIAA pushed everything forward a week last year.
Right, yep.
Yeah, this is the second year we've had the week before. Yeah, it was always a little.
We will get it for you.
All righty.
Good deal.
Me too.
Yes.